Like everyone else, social distancing has changed my life. A year ago, I had the world in my hands, an amazing, intelligent, fun, and beautiful wife, a family that cared for me, a great-paying job with steady career potential, friends I would trust with my life. So how do you start doubting yourself and everything happening in your life? You find that what you considered reliable isn't as sturdy as expected. As the fear of COVID began to spread, each state decided to take its own measures to cope with the crisis, since the federal government wasn't interested in a nationwide lockdown, leaving states to fend for themselves. Each state acted in line with its political leanings. Those leaning liberal began to shut down, while those leaning conservative kept everything open. We found amusement in the governor shutting everything down, while the state legislature and judges tried to force reopening. But until that happened, everything remained closed, and gatherings of more than 20 people were prohibited.
Welcome to the Dark Side channel. Dive into the world of human relationships, mistakes, and right decisions. Don't miss out. Subscribe and join our growing community.
Unless you decided to protest, in which case protests remained permissible. If you can make sense of any of this logic, you're doing better than me. Since our fearless governor and health advisor didn't deem us essential, we set up our new workspaces in our previously established home office, which fortunately required minimal physical alterations, just aspects of planning our conflict-free work, alongside the demands of various online meetings and assignments for the kids. 2 out of 3 kids had proactive teachers who assigned work, but 1 had a lazy teacher who barely assigned them anything and mostly took days off until the end of the semester. Strict adherence to our schedule became necessary as we juggled teaching, parenting, and work duties to the best of our abilities. Most of the time, one of us would teach parent while the other worked, and then we'd switch. Friday evenings became golden work time when the kids finished their week's projects. After finishing their schooling, they'd connect to their digital device of choice, allowing both of us to work simultaneously with minimal distraction. That's when Sarah and I had a rare office moment. She's a mid-level manager responsible for about 10 people whom she has to communicate with fairly regularly. On Fridays, they held weekly meetings to ensure everyone knew what was happening and was ready for the next week. It was one of the typical meetings. Those who were successful were congratulated, and those below par were either gently inspired if it was a one-off occurrence or told to stay after the meeting for a one-on-one consultation, which meant they were in serious trouble. Andrea was one of Sarah's less successful performers, which was quite understandable considering Andrea was hired for her looks rather than her sharpness. In the times when you could personally meet people, her stunning appearance made complete business sense. Guys would get distracted by her looks and perhaps decide to place an order just to see her again. Silly, but it works. That set of skills becomes irrelevant when there are no face-to-face meetings and you really need to know what you're talking about to make a sale. Selling sexuality is much harder over video than in close proximity. Andrea had not the best set of skills, so she was always on the unsuccessful list, and today was no exception. I smiled as I listened to Sarah talking about Andrea's job dissatisfaction. Despite Sarah's attempts to stay positive, everyone on the Zoom call knew Andrea was in trouble when Sarah told her to wait after the meeting. "Of course, Sarah, I'll wait," Andrea replied disappointedly. That should have been the end of it. But it sometimes happens to most of us at some point after we finish speaking in a video conference. We forget to mute. I don't know who she was talking to, maybe to herself, but Andrea just let her feelings out, unaware that the sound was still on. Damn self-righteous virago is going to yell at me for messing up a little. Wonder how confident she'd be if I told her husband she was having sex with Corey at the last conference. My head immediately snapped away from the computer to look at my previously loving wife as her eyes widened and her mouth fell open. You could hear her team members yelling, "Oh my God, shut up!" and even, "Damn it, this can't be real." I stood up from my desk and walked over to the Zoom call. "Thank you, Andrea. If possible, I'd like to have a chat with you about my wife's relationship with Corey." I gave her my mobile number and email address, while Sarah just sat there in complete shock at what had transpired. You probably don't need to wait around after the call either. I think Sarah has other things to deal with right now, so maybe she'll talk to you later. John, Before you dig yourself into a deeper hole, let's take this conversation to the bedroom so we can discuss it while you pack. I saw her look around in confusion at her computer. Then she turned and followed me as I left the office. Entering the bedroom, I reached under the bed and pulled out her suitcase. Pack up whatever you need to live at your parents' house in the foreseeable future. John, I'm so sorry. It was a one-time thing. I was celebrating and drank too much after sealing the Collins deal. I swear it was just once, and I've been feeling so guilty since. Of course you feel guilty, which is why you should have told me right away when you got home. Pack up your stuff and head to your parents. I'll even give them a call to let them know you're coming. Taking out my phone, I called my father-in-law, and he picked up after the second ring. Well, wasn't it great that Brady behaved so well last weekend? Best day we've had in years. It was amusing to watch, but unfortunately I have a serious issue, and I need your help. It seems your daughter has a boyfriend, as I was just informed. While I figure out what's going on, could she stay with you and Jackie for a while? This isn't funny, John. No, Tom, I wish it was. Talk to her yourself. I handed the phone to Sarah, who looked at it as if it were a live grenade. She slowly brought it to her ear. I'm sorry, Dad. While Jackie had been an English teacher, Tom clearly possessed a vocabulary of profanity that would make a fleet admiral envious. As he berated Sarah, I continued packing her clothes, then grabbed a small suitcase and moved on to her toiletries. After a few minutes, she handed me the phone, tears streaming down her face. So, is it okay if she stays for a while? Sure, maybe I can knock some sense into this idiot. After a pause, he continued, Why are you so calm right now? Are you okay? I'm just in shock right now. What really concerns me is that later on, I'll be angry and possibly cruel to her. I think it's better for everyone if she's away for a few days while I figure out what happened. She'll be leaving soon. Ending the call, I turned to Sarah. I'll put this in your car and tell the kids you're going away for a couple of days. Let me be very clear about my position right now. You lied. You're leaving. If this is an ongoing affair, then you're leaving for good. It's only because of the kids that I'm not filing for divorce today, so you have some time before I call Dave for a divorce lawyer recommendation. She walked out the door soon after I finished loading the bags into her car trunk. Pain and guilt were clearly written on her face, but alas, we were no longer the happy couple we were 30 minutes ago. Damn, my life felt like a charade, and it happened faster than I could order a pizza. I realized I was in shock and that since Andrea opened her mouth, I'd been operating on autopilot. I quickly messaged my friends Bill and Ted, letting them know I wouldn't be able to make it tonight. The responses came quickly. She's got you by the balls. Grabbing a beer, I fired back, I wish she was only playing with mine. A second later, I realized what I'd typed, and I could already picture what would come next. I called the neighbors and asked if the kids could stay overnight with them. I dropped off the kids and managed to return without engaging in a serious conversation with the neighbors. Shortly after I returned home, Bill showed up at my door. As I opened the door to let him in, Ted pulled up in his crappy pickup truck. We watched with interest and awe as Ted climbed into the bed of his truck and pulled out a shovel, garbage bags, and limes. Bill and I just looked at each other, both clearly embarrassed as Ted approached us. "We're gonna off this scumbag, right?" Ted said. Bill burst out laughing, and I couldn't help myself either. Ted just looked utterly ridiculous. Bill asked him, "What are you gonna do with the limes? Make her a margarita and poison her with alcohol?" "No, dumbass. I saw on YouTube a documentary about a Mexican cartel that used limes to dispose of bodies." "You need lie, idiot." "Oh, got it. I saw that on YouTube. They dumped bodies in lime and it got rid of the skin and stuff." Perhaps there's something better to distract oneself from the awful feeling than listening to two people engage in a silly argument. But since Ted openly declared his intention to kill Sarah, it would be better to get these two inside before the cops showed up, and I had to explain Ted's choice. "He's not calling you a liar, buddy. He's trying to tell you that it's lie, not lime. Lie breaks down the body like you said." "Really?" "Afraid so. Let's go inside and I'll tell you what happened." While Ted prepared a margarita with lime in the blender, I recounted the story of how I found out and what I'd done so far. Ted paused the blender for a moment to speak up. So this other chick just opened her mouth and you heard all that. Man, that sucks. Big titties on the chatterbox or something? Maybe you talked to her and then screw her to get back at her? I saw her at last year's Christmas party, and she's quite a hottie, but I'm not ready to stoop down to Sarah's level just yet. Bill took a sip of the margarita and made a sound of approval after swallowing. You should talk to the chick and find out what she knows about Sarah's cheating. You need to know what you're dealing with before going down the path of war, and you're more likely to hear it from Sarah's enemies than her friends. If it was a one-time thing, it's a tough call, but if it's an ongoing affair, then it's clear. Kick her out. Taking a sip of the margarita, I nodded, appreciating how well the limes transformed from potential perpetrators into a tasty beverage. All right, then I'll start by figuring it out. Right. And if it's been happening multiple times, you'll hook up with the chick. I just chuckled. Yeah, good plan. Waking up the next morning with a headache, I popped a couple of aspirins and started my search for information. Finding Andrea's phone number in Sarah's home office wasn't difficult, so I called her and asked to meet up for a chat. Apologizing, she agreed to meet me for a cup of coffee. The meeting with Andrea was informative and gave me what I hoped to hear. Sarah had been distraught and not paying attention to what she was drinking, ending up drinking too much. Andrea had seen Sarah crying as she left Corey's room the next morning. Andrea actually defended Sarah, which surprised me a bit. She told me how much Sarah loves me. Andrea was embarrassed and regretful for accidentally revealing it to me during the Zoom meeting. I appreciate you telling me. I prefer the ugly truth over a pretty lie. I paid for lunch and headed home. Picking up the kids and warmly thanking the neighbors, we headed home. Keeping the kids entertained, I tried to think about what I wanted. I was upset and angry about what she did, but up until then, she had been an amazing wife and mother. As if to reaffirm her good qualities, Sarah called during lunch. I know you hate me, but I just wanted to call and make sure you and the kids are okay. So, not only am I a terrible husband, but also an incompetent father. No, that's not what I meant at all. Peggy sent me a message asking to have some fun last night while she watched the kids. I know I've caused you a lot of pain, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay. So, did you have fun last night? Enjoying some quality time with your lover? Sometimes I couldn't help but lash out, and petty jabs at moments like this seemed to make me feel a little better. And yes, I was acting childish, but she started it. I spent the whole evening in tears telling my parents what a complete idiot I am, and how I'll end up a weird divorced lady with 100 cats. I couldn't help but smile, knowing how much she despised cats. I can never tell you how much I regret what I've done to us. Please give me a chance to show you that I'm more than just the jerk who did something really stupid. I paused for a moment. I had a rough idea in my head of what I wanted to do, at least with her. Come back home tomorrow afternoon. We'll talk and figure out where we stand. But don't forget, there were at least 2 stupid things when you didn't confess to me upon your return. We'll talk, and I'll decide what I'm going to do. Really? Yes. But I need you to write down everything you did with him and anyone else you were with. I need to know the extent of the mess I'm dealing with. So if you have any more skeletons you're hiding, you better write about it in the letter. Okay, should I email the letter or bring it with me? Both. Bring it with you. Children paid no attention to what was happening and accepted without hesitation that Sarah was at her parents' house. Pizza and drinks in front of the TV helped the kids get through the evening. The next morning after breakfast, the kids and I went for a walk. As we walked, I asked them various questions about school and sports. Towards the end of the walk, I asked each of them what they liked about their mom. I like it when she reads me bedtime stories. I like your stories too, Dad, but Mom's are way better, said Susie. I couldn't help but laugh. Thanks. I guess second place isn't so bad. I turned to Jane. When she helps me with my math homework to make sure I get it right. Are you saying I'm bad at helping with math? No, Dad, it's just that she teaches it a little differently, so it's easier for me to understand when she does it because we kind of think alike. That's fair. How about you, Will? I like how she takes care of us. Not just the cleaning, which you both do, But the little things she does, how she makes sure we know she loves us, even if we mess up. Like when someone decided to use her makeup as war paint? Yeah, she was upset, but I still knew she loved me. Lost in my own thoughts for a moment, I simply replied, "Yeah, that's true." When we got back home, Sarah was already there. The kids hugged her and disappeared. Sarah had always been the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, but now she looked awful. I approached, hugged her, and held her tightly. Yes, I was angry with her. Yes, she was entirely at fault. It wasn't about forgiving her mistake. It was about allowing her to feel a little comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. I let her go and stepped back. "Let's talk outside." As we sat on chairs in the patio, she placed the letter in front of me. I opened the envelope and began reading the letter. She went into more detail than I would have liked when she wrote about all the guys she had been with before we met. But most importantly, she told me what happened with Corey, in excruciating detail. She expressed her shame for her foolishness. He just took advantage of the situation when they were both drunk. She confessed her failure. She offered to take a lie detector test, but I told her not to bother, as it would be a waste of time. If she lied, it would be the end for us. She knew it, just as I did. We talked until lunchtime, and then again after. We agreed that marriage counseling might be a good idea. We planned to approach counseling as marriage tuning. We had a mishap that broke our marriage, but we needed to ensure that nothing like that would happen again. Preventive maintenance sometimes saves us from mishaps. Fortunately, with social distancing, Sarah won't have to meet colleagues face to face, so her embarrassment will be less than if she had to go to work. On Monday, she called her boss and told him about what happened between her and Corey, and how it all came out at the Zoom meeting. Corey wasn't her boss, so there was nothing against the company's policy on internal relationships. We both juggled our tasks, switching between work and parenting until the day ended, and we couldn't finally collapse from exhaustion. The next morning, I woke up with my shorts slightly down and a pleasant feeling of Sarah's lips on my friend. She started stroking me, teasing. I decisively pushed her onto her back, then climbed on top, pressing her with my whole body. With my left hand, I grabbed her hands by the head. Releasing her hands, I cupped her face with my palms as we made love. It wasn't a malicious act of hate, it was just two people valuing what they had. We'd done this hundreds of times, but because of the stress we were under, everything was different. We knew we were together, and we understood how close we were to the edge and how far we still had to go. A week later, Corey went for a run in the woods when he accidentally ran into one of the runners. Corey fell down a hill into a thorny bush, and his skin was scratched all over. When he returned to the top, several people passing by stopped to help. They didn't have a first aid kit, but they had a few limes from lunch, and they were very convincing, suggesting it was actually a natural disinfectant. Corey screamed in pain as the acid began to clot his blood, causing a minor chemical burn. However, it helped stop the bleeding. Corey lay there screaming and crying in pain as the guys left, not hearing them talking to each other. Lemon lime is a good thing. Yes. Do you know alkaline crap can also clean drains? I found it at Home Depot. Good. Because when John's done with the idiot, we might need that along with your shovel.